Here's something the pesticide aisle would rather you didn't figure out. The same brown bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide you dab on a scraped knee can wipe out garden pests at the one moment they're defenseless, while they're still soft, still eggs, still larvae, before the next generation ever hatches. It costs about $1, it breaks down into nothing but water and oxygen, and it fizzes the bad guys right out of your soil. Let's dig in. Before we start counting, here's the one thing that makes this whole trick work, because once you understand it, every pest on this list suddenly makes sense. Hydrogen peroxide is an oxidizer. When that extra oxygen atom rips loose, it tears through soft cell membranes on contact. That's why it fizzes on a cut, and that's the exact same reaction that shreds a soft-bodied insect, a larva, or an egg. The catch, and this is the honest part most videos skip, is that it has almost no staying power. It reacts, it fizzes, it's gone in minutes, leaving no residue behind. So it's a knockout punch, not a landmine. That means the real strategy isn't one dramatic spray, it's timing. You hit the pests during their soft, vulnerable egg and larva window. Then you come back every few days to catch whatever hatches next, and that's how you break the breeding cycle before it ever gets going. The US EPA even recognizes hydrogen peroxide as a minimum risk pesticide ingredient, which is a fancy way of saying it's cheap, effective, and about as safe as garden weapons get. All right, let's meet the 15. Number 1. Fungus gnats. If you've ever knocked a houseplant and watched a little cloud of tiny black flies puff up out of the soil, you've met fungus gnats, and they're the poster child for this whole method. The adults buzzing around your face are just an annoyance. The real damage happens underground, where their larvae chew on tender roots and spread fungal disease. Here's where hydrogen peroxide shines. Let the top couple inches of soil dry out, then mix 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide with 4 parts water and drench the soil until it runs out the drainage holes. You'll hear it fizz, and that fizzing is the sound of larvae and eggs getting oxidized on contact right there in the root zone. Because gnats reproduce fast, from egg to adult in about 3 to 4 weeks, you repeat this every 7 to 10 days until they're gone. As a bonus, that same drench floods oxygen into the roots and flushes out the excess fertilizer salts these gnats love. 1 cheap bottle, 2 problems solved. Number 2. Aphids. Aphids are the freeloaders of the garden, soft, pear-shaped little sapsuckers that cluster on new growth and multiply at a genuinely alarming rate. And soft is the magic word here, because soft is exactly what hydrogen peroxide was built to destroy. For aphids, you switch from a soil drench to a foliar spray, and you go gentler so you don't scorch the leaves, about 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide to 10 parts water. Spray until the leaves are coated, top and bottom, because aphids love hiding on the undersides. The oxidation ruptures their delicate membranes on contact. Even better, greenhouse trials found hydrogen peroxide is especially lethal to insects in their embryonic stage, meaning it hits the developing young before they ever mature into egg-laying adults. That's the whole ball game. Knock out this generation, come back in a few days to catch the next batch, and the colony never gets its explosion. Do a spot test on 1 leaf first and wait 3 days, just to make sure your particular plant tolerates it. Number 3. Spider mites. Spider mites are the pest you notice too late. By the time you spot the faint webbing on your leaves, there are already thousands of them. A single female can lay around 20 eggs a day, and those eggs hatch in about 3 days. That kind of math is exactly why breaking the cycle matters more than any single spray. A fine hydrogen peroxide mist, aimed hard at the undersides of the leaves where mites congregate, will visibly knock down the active adults on contact. Their thin bodies just can't handle the oxidation. Now here's the honest catch. The eggs are tougher, and a single spray won't get all of them. So you treat, then treat again every 3 days for 2 to 3 weeks, catching each new wave the moment it hatches and before it can breed. Some gardeners pair it with neem oil to mop up the survivors. It's not a one-shot miracle, but as a cheap, fast knockdown that buys you control while you break the reproductive chain, it earns its spot. Number 4. Whiteflies. Give any leaf with whiteflies a little shake and you'll see them. A tiny flurry of white specks lifting off like snow. They're relatives of aphids. They suck sap the same way, and they coat your plants in sticky honeydew that grows black, sooty mold. And like their cousins, they're soft-bodied at every stage. The winning move with whiteflies is targeting the undersides of leaves, because that's where the females glue their eggs and where the immobile young nymphs sit feeding. A gentle hydrogen peroxide spray, 1 part to 10 parts water, reaches those eggs and nymphs directly. In greenhouse field trials, whiteflies were one of the pests knocked back specifically at their embryonic stage, the young hit, before they ever matured. Spray in the early morning so the solution sits on the leaf longer before evaporating. Coat those undersides thoroughly and repeat every few days. You're not chasing the adults around the room, you're erasing the next generation while it's still stuck to the leaf. Number 5. Mealybugs. Mealybugs look almost harmless, little white cottony tufts tucked into the joints of your plants like someone dabbed on bits of fuzz. That fuzz is actually a waxy coat they build to protect their soft bodies underneath, and it's what makes them so frustrating for a lot of sprays. Hydrogen peroxide has an answer. The oxidizing solution can penetrate and break down that waxy, cottony covering, exposing the vulnerable insect underneath to the full oxidizing effect. Spray directly onto the clusters, and for the eggs and crawlers hiding down in the soil around the roots, follow up with a diluted drench. Adding a single drop of dish soap to your spray helps it cling and cut through the wax instead of beating off. Mealybugs also happen to be one of the pests greenhouse trials singled out as being knocked down at the embryonic stage, so hitting the egg masses matters. Keep at it every several days, because the waxy new hatchlings keep coming until you've cleared the whole clutch. Number 6. Thrips. Thrips are so small, they look like nothing more than dark flecks or slivers scratched across your leaves, which is exactly why an infestation gets bad before most people even realize they have one. They rasp open plant tissue and drink the sap, leaving behind silvery scars and stunted, deformed growth. Because thrips are slender and soft, direct contact with a hydrogen peroxide spray interferes with their respiratory system, and they essentially can't breathe through the oxidation. The key word is contact. You have to actually hit them, and they're squirmy and love to hide, so thorough coverage of every leaf surface is everything. Thrips were another pest that greenhouse trials found susceptible in their embryonic and young stages, which is where hydrogen peroxide does its best work. Spray gently, 1 to 10, get into the crevices and flower buds where they tuck themselves away, and repeat every few days. Between sprays, hang a few sticky traps to catch the adults, so you're hammering the population from both directions. Number 7. Broad mites and russet mites. If spider mites are hard to see, broad mites and russet mites are practically invisible. You can't spot them without magnification. You only know they're there by the damage. Weirdly twisted new leaves, bronzed or rusty-looking stems, growing tips that curl and stall out for no obvious reason. Gardeners burn weeks blaming disease or nutrients before they realize the real culprit is a mite too small to see. The good news is that too small to see also means extremely soft and extremely fragile. These microscopic mites have even less protection than spider mites, so a fine hydrogen peroxide mist hits them hard on contact. Focus on the newest growth and the growing tips, because that tender young tissue is exactly where these mites cluster and lay. As always, it's a contact killer with no residual, so the rhythm is the same. Mist, wait a few days, mist again, until the fresh new leaves finally come in clean and flat instead of twisted. Catching the eggs on that new growth is what finally turns the corner. Number 8. Root aphids. Just when you thought you'd learned to spot aphids, here's the sneaky version. Root aphids live entirely underground, feeding on roots where you'll never see them on a leaf. Plants wilt, yellow, and underperform while the gardener stares at healthy-looking foliage, completely baffled. This is where the soil drench becomes your best friend. Because root aphids are the same soft-bodied creature as their above-ground cousins, just living in the dirt, a hydrogen peroxide drench reaches them exactly where they hide. Mix 1 part 3% peroxide to 4 or 5 parts water and soak the soil thoroughly, all the way through until it drains out the bottom. The solution fizzes through the root zone, oxidizing the aphids and their eggs on contact while simultaneously blasting oxygen to the stressed roots they've been damaging. Let the soil dry out a bit first so the drench pulls down deep, and repeat the treatment a week or 2 later to catch anything that hatches after the first pass. It's the same weapon as number 2, just pointed underground. Number 9. Root mealybugs. Root mealybugs are the underground twin of the fuzzy pests from number 5. And they might be the single most underdiagnosed houseplant killer out there. You won't see a thing on the plant. It's only when you finally pull the plant out of its pot that you discover the roots crawling with little white specks, feeding away in secret. Because you'll almost never catch these on the surface, the treatment is a drench, not a spray. Mix 1 part pure 3% hydrogen peroxide to 4 or 5 parts water and soak the entire root ball thoroughly. The fizzing action is what kills the mealybugs and their eggs down in the soil. For a small pot, repeat in 7 to 10 days. For a larger pot, give it 2 weeks, since it takes longer for the drench to reach everything. Serious infestations usually call for repotting into fresh soil on top of the drench, because you want to physically remove as many of the hidden egg layers as possible while the peroxide handles the stragglers. Number 10. Springtails and shore flies. If you keep houseplants, you've probably seen these without knowing their names. Tiny things that spring off the soil surface when disturbed, or small dark flies skittering across damp potting mix. They thrive on one specific thing, the algae and fungus that grow on chronically wet soil. And that's their fatal weakness. Hydrogen peroxide attacks on 2 fronts here. First, the oxidation kills the soft-bodied springtails and shore fly larvae directly. Second, and this is the clever part, greenhouses use hydrogen peroxide as an algicide, which means a soil drench destroys the algae and fungus these pests eat and breed in. Take away the food source and the damp breeding film, and you've pulled the rug out from under the entire next generation, not just the bugs you can see today. Use the standard 1 to 4 soil drench, and then fix the root cause by letting your soil dry out more between waterings. Half of beating these pests is just watering a little less. Number 11. Scale insects. Now let's be straight with you, because this is one where the internet oversells hydrogen peroxide. A mature scale insect is armored. It sits on a stem under a hard waxy shell like a tiny turtle. And once that armor is on, a peroxide spray mostly just rolls off. If someone promises it dissolves grown scale, they're stretching the truth. But, and this is the whole point of a video about eggs, scale has a soft window. Before they build that shell, baby scale insects are crawlers, tiny, soft, mobile, and completely exposed. That's your opening. Time your hydrogen peroxide spray for when the crawlers are active and hitting the plant, and the oxidation shreds them just like any other soft-bodied pest before they can lock down into armored adults and start the cycle over. This is the pest that proves the thesis of the whole list. Hydrogen peroxide isn't about brute force on the tough adults, it's about catching pests in the narrow moment they're still soft. Number 12. Leaf miner eggs. Leaf miners drive gardeners crazy because of where they live, inside the leaf. The adult is a small fly, but the damage comes from larvae that tunnel between the upper and lower leaf surfaces, carving those pale, squiggly trails. And once a larva is safely tunneling inside the leaf, almost nothing sprayed on the outside can touch it, which is precisely why you attack earlier. Before those larvae burrow in, the eggs sit on the leaf surface, exposed, soft, and reachable. A gentle hydrogen peroxide spray across the leaves, especially the undersides where females lay, oxidizes those eggs before they ever hatch into tunneling larvae. This is the before they lay eggs principle in its purest form. You can't win the fight once they're hidden inside the leaf, so you win it on the surface first. Stay on a regular spray schedule during the season when the adult flies are active, and you intercept each new batch of eggs while they're still out in the open. Number 13, fruit flies in the soil and drains. Fruit flies feel like a kitchen problem, but for anyone with houseplants or a compost habit, they're a garden problem too. They breed in damp, decaying organic matter, which describes overwatered potting soil and the gunk in your drains perfectly. Hydrogen peroxide gives you two clean strikes. On infested soil, a diluted drench oxidizes the larvae and eggs, living in that top layer of wet, rotting organic matter. And for the drain that's been launching them into your kitchen, pouring hydrogen peroxide down, it eliminates the fruit flies and their eggs breeding in the slime coating the pipe. Because it breaks down into water and oxygen, you're not dumping anything nasty into your plumbing or your plant. Hit both the soil and the drain in the same day so you're not just relocating the problem, and let that soil dry out afterward to keep them from coming back. No rotting film, no breeding ground, no next generation. Number 14, slug and snail eggs. Here's the honest version because it matters. A big, slimy adult slug gliding across your hostas at night? Hydrogen peroxide is not your best tool for that. The adults are large, coated in protective mucus, and mostly shrug it off. Anyone selling peroxide as a slug-slaying miracle is skipping the fine print. But their eggs are a completely different story. Slugs and snails lay clusters of soft, translucent, jelly-like eggs tucked into moist soil and under debris. And soft and moist is exactly what hydrogen peroxide destroys. When you're already drenching your soil for other pests on this list, that same oxidizing action can wreck those exposed egg clutches before a single new slug ever hatches. So the move here isn't chasing adults with a spray bottle at midnight, it's using your routine soil treatment to quietly erase the next generation before it arrives. Handle the grown slugs with traps or barriers and let the peroxide do its real job underground on the eggs. Number 15, root knot nematodes. We'll close with the deep cut, literally, because these live at the bottom of the root zone. Root knot nematodes are microscopic worms that invade roots and cause swollen galls, leaving plants stunted, wilting, and starving no matter how much you water or feed them. They're one of the most frustrating soil problems a gardener can face. Now, the honest framing, the evidence for hydrogen peroxide against nematodes is thinner than it is for the soft-bodied insects up top, so treat this as a helpful supporting player, not a silver bullet. What a diluted soil drench genuinely does is flood the root zone with oxygen and oxidize soft organic threats in the soil. And nematodes fare worst in that kind of well-oxygenated, freshly disturbed environment. Use a gentle dilution, around 1 part 3% peroxide to 10 or 20 parts water, so you don't harm the roots or torch every beneficial microbe. And lean on it as one piece of a bigger plan alongside crop rotation and healthy soil. It's the cheapest first move you can make while you build a real defense. So there it is, $1 bottle, 15 pests, and the whole trick comes down to timing your hit for the soft egg and larva window and coming back to catch each new hatch. Remember, spot test first, mix it fresh, and reapply. If this saved your plants a little grief, give it a like and subscribe for more cheap garden fixes that actually work.